Welcome back to the Growth Hacking Culture podcast, where we explore the real stories behind today's biggest business transformations. Today, we are tackling a topic that's on every leader's mind: the impact of AI on digitalization. While the headlines often focus on the technology itself, the algorithms, the data, the amazing new capabilities, the real challenge and the real value lies in the human element. Research shows that over 90% of companies plan to increase their AI investments. The biggest hurdles aren't technical. They are about people, bridging the gap between what leaders think their employees are ready for and what is actually happening on the ground, and navigating the risk of over reliance on AI, which can lead to a decline in critical thinking skills. Our guest today is a veteran in enterprise technology who has seen it all. Evan Schwartz is the author of the essential book People, Places, and Things, a framework for a pain-free ERP implementation. His work has always put the human factor at the center of the large-scale tech projects, the ones that we remember back in the days with a lot of pain. Now, he is here to help us understand how that timeless framework applies to the age of AI. We're going to be discussing how AI is reshaping the role of employees, the future of change management, and the biggest pitfalls organizations must avoid to make their digitalization journey a success. Evan, it is a pleasure to have you here because
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
I
Thank you.
have so many questions. Evan, I was mentioning to you back in the days, implementation of SAP were painful. I remember it was the beginning of my career in corporate, beginning of the 2000s, being part of an SAP project, seeing people that do not live for 2 years, seeing invoices coming up millions and millions of dollars because everything had to be in a box, everything had to last forever.
Mm.
Now, my belief is that with this AI thingy, things are changing. And maybe some people are not ready for it in the corporate side and even in the supplier side. This software who are so beautiful and have so much branding, maybe they are not ready for that. Evan, you are here to enlighten me with more information about that.
Sure, sure. So what specific question are you concerned? Because I'm going to tell you, as late as last week, it's still painful for a lot of people. So from 2000 to 2025, it's not gotten a ton better. The whole point of the framework behind people, places, and things is you still have to understand the journey and understand where the technology should be applied. There's a concern in the industry where there's sort of a peanut butter spread of agentic AI or AI, just rub some AI on it, it'll be better in the morning type of panacea approach. And there's two problems with that. Is one, if you haven't thought through the use case, you've already failed. If you did think through the use case, but you haven't prepared the people to use it, you've failed. And we're running a little too fast across both of those scenarios. A good example of the first one is the 99.1 use case scenario, where, here's a happy path. This is classic software development. I want this thing to happen. Perfect. AI can do that thing quite well. So, for instance, right now, my software, my ERP, my SAP, my whatever I've got doesn't tell me when a customer calls in whether or not, because the contract they sign gives them so many free services, how many free services they've already gotten, and then how many is in their contract, because our sales team will customize a sales contract on a customer by customer basis, which has made my job as a CSR hard. Hey, that sounds like a great job for AI. Just load up all the contracts into some file server, let AI do that work, then go into the account history, tell me how many free there are, and then I'll decide whether this is free or cost money. It's a brilliant use case. The problem is 99% of the time, your customers aren't abusing you. They're within their free services. So the reality, especially if it's just one of those limited, I give this away, it's just a value add to get your other service, right? So I don't have a bunch of abusers, but I'm now paying AI 99% of the time to tell me that this is a free giveaway service. And only 1% of the time am I actually capturing the abuser. So it's actually costing me more than if I just kept giving it away for free. And that's just a flaw in how we're thinking about software design today in an AI world, where we've made the mistake of the internet. Internet came out, everything's free on the internet. In
Hmm.
the early 1995, when I moved from standard software and I tried to go to internet and I tried to charge for it, they burned me in effigy. How dare you charge for things on the internet? The internet's free. I was like, well, how are you going to make money? So at the end of the day, that false narrative that everyone can go into ChatGPT and for $20 a month, I can ask this thing anything I want, has created a false narrative. Because when you try to productize it, you try to put it into, there's a cost. We're learning how to get it to imperceivable cost, but we're not there yet, right? There's learning happening along the way, and there's key things. So if we were in a technical audience, I'd be happy to tell you what those magical things are, but I don't see them broadly being adopted.
Hmm.
Like one of the counterintuitive, this would be about as techy as I'm willing to get here, is you see those giant LLMs, Grok 4, 5, GPT-5. Now they know even more than they knew before. Those are oracles that have been fed the entire knowledge of the internet. That's the knowledge in there. But for business practical use, that's useless to me. I need something that's brilliant enough to work out a flow that can look into my MCP layer, my model context layer, and go, here's my APIs, maybe in SAP, maybe in our product, and says to do the thing you're asking me to do, I would call 1, 5, 6, 8, 10 in that order, pass it this data and get in, or I'd ask you for the data I need, and it would go do that work for me. That's a much smaller LLM. That's maybe in the 2 to 8 billion parameter LLM can work out the reasoning. But every single time I ask that agent to do something, and it now relies on the knowledge that was encoded in the LLM to achieve it. Like, for instance, I'm asking it to send out a message to my customers, and I've embedded those little tokens, those little bracy words, and I didn't tell it how to fill it out. It just figured it out. That's a risk. Now, in today's world, if you ask it, it's like, look how awesome it is. It figured it out on its own. That's the whole power of AI. Well, be careful. There's a stochastic nature to AI. There's randomness to it. We call it hallucinations. So it got it right this time. It might not get it right on like the 50th time or the fifth time. The more and more you're relying on what's in its LLM knowledge base, the more at risk you are of delivering that. These are just learnings that are coming out today. You'll see folks out there trying to command AI through brute force with a 25-page prompt that looks more like code than it looks like a language. And it's like, man, we've almost defeated the purpose of
Hmm.
having these things to be able to talk to them. And now I got to talk to it in this weird way, if then else. That feels like pseudocode. And now you're pages and pages long on this. So that means this is almost like the diagnosis of elimination doctors go through. I can deduce it's this because I've eliminated everything. Well, Mr. Wizard, that means you know everything. Who knows everything? Nobody knows everything. So you're already at 25 pages. What are the odds you're going to go to 26 or 27 for something else you didn't plan for? You have an infinite test case then. So it's it's a mixed bag. There are some really powerful use cases where AI are being force multipliers, but we're building frameworks around it now. We're starting to go, if the agent has a confidence level below X, whatever your threshold is, and that's a moving target, right? I don't need to be perfect because I would never use this thing in a billing engine or an accounting system, but I might use it in a customer service role where I have already a measured error rate with my human customer service at between 15 to 20%. So that means if my agentic AI is 15 to 20% and my agentic AI costs less than my customer service, and my customer service agent can orchestrate 100 of those because 15 to 20% are off-ramping
Hmm.
to the human, now I've got something that has value. And now I liken this to the point of because I just wrote this article for Forbes about I'm probably one of the few guys that'll tell you that there's a bright future at the end of AI if we choose it, right? You'll see the best and brightest minds in this space preaching prophecies of impending doom. It's like every feed I see, but we can choose another path. Life isn't happening to us, right? We're doing this. And in that, what I explain is that we've we went from the industrial age where machines alleviated the physical burden of life to us. It used to take 200 able-bodied men to plow a field to grow food by hand with a stick and some kind of a metal thing. With the invention of a tractor, two men can now do that same field with that tractor. Now, yeah, there's 198 able-bodied guys that had to go do something else, right? But they're able-bodied. So what else could they do? Maybe I could farm a lot more land by dividing them by two and giving them a tractor. Now I can do tens of thousands of acres of land, right? That's an infinite game for us to think that way. If I just think that I got rid of 198 employees, I have two in a tractor, that's a finite game. I can't get any more efficiency out of that system than that. And if I try to go to zero, we will have fading. It will degrade, and there will be no one to keep the tractor running, right? There's no one to change the oil, no one to keep it going. You'll never get to zero, right? So don't even try. And that's the person plus AI strategy. Keep humans in the mix, allow them to offline, be force multipliers. But in the information age, our education system, and I've seen this in my own son, so this is a very personal, passionate thing for me. My son went to school, was very excited, fearless, everything's possible, no matter how crazy it sounded, artistic, wasn't afraid of failure, laughed it off, learned from it, ran until he reached a point where he got honor status. He got straight A's and now he has a status. And then the risks went away. He stopped taking risks because he didn't want to lose his honor status, right? At that point, taking a risk, I have nowhere but down to go. Why would I take a risk at this point? But then he started getting into repeatable excellence. Two plus two is always four. You always do math this way. You always do the science this way. You always, and he output out of that is what business needed, is an employee that can do something repeatedly at a level of excellence that's acceptable over and over again. That's a terrible existence. We've accepted it as the norm. My point is, let's let AI take that burden from us, as we've allowed machines to take that physical burden from us. And let's not beat out of our children that intuitive, creative, strategic thinking, fearlessness to take risks and not be afraid to fail that they're born with. Could you imagine what humanity as a whole would look like if our next generation of children went all the way through grade school, being able to command AIs with a fearlessness of failure, always looking to be a learning, growing person? I couldn't even imagine how great that society would be.
That would be great. L- let's recap a little bit about the human side of now in the age of AI. So, if I go back in the early 2000s, change management, it was an IT guy giving you 200 pages of instructions to read about the famous SAP implementation. Um,
Right.
then in 2010, then there was a lot of companies using models of change management like CAD. Um, some of the principles were either misunderstood or misused in order to manipulate people, believing that with an SAP implementation you need to have a party, otherwise you are not doing change management. 2010, and more and more we see that there has been an evolution to in order that employees get to participate in the design of the implementation, and at the same time we have become a little bit more agile in terms of the requirements. We don't have to write all these long business cases in order to have approvals and so on. With the age of AI, are we changing? Do we need to change something into the people's side so that they get to use it correctly, they get to intervene correctly, it becomes also more agile?
Yeah, so if you think about where AI is going to fit, and in the reality, even change management with your classic ERPs, we're not hitting on all cylinders, as you pointed out, because adoption rates are still pretty low. There's like a 70% failure rate along the implementation. So something's wrong there. The reality is you don't need to really involve people in the design. While
Mm,
that sounds good, that's not why they did that. The purpose behind it was to get the people behind the vision
mm,
of what you were doing. And in fact, getting them in the design, all that does is give you, if you got 100 people, you got 100 different ways of doing the same thing, right? You're going to get a bunch of input, and then someone's going to get hurt if their design wasn't taken in. But if you get them behind the vision, why are we doing this? Right. So that's what the customer journey is the digital companion to the book is really about for customers is how do you go along this journey of digital change management, how you can use AI to facilitate it as well. But it's more about this is why we bought the system. We're looking for these four things. They have an ROI. There will be some things we don't get because there's nothing on the shelf that looks like the system that has matured in our environment for 15 years. That's a unicorn I cannot get. But after 15 years, what we've got might start to fill in some of these gaps. What are the high value items as to why? Then what's the roadmap with the vendor? What's the journey of transformation that's going to last long after the implementation? Too many customers want what they have today plus.
Mm,
And that is if you're doing that right now, you're already on a road to disaster. You're going to spend millions more than you had planned on something, and then frustration's going to hit, and you may not even get what you were hoping for. And it's just the dichotomy of what is your incentives as the customer versus incentives of the vendor. You go to the vendor and go, I need a checkbox on the screen. And you're going to pay the vendor, and the vendor gives you a change request. So why wouldn't the vendor do that? The reality is you're not a software designer. I don't know what your business is. Are you doing chemicals? Are you selling toys? But you're not a software designer. So you have no business telling them to put a checkbox on a screen. You have
mm,
no idea what pain you've just caused upstream. How many reports now have to be changed because you've added a data field to a customer screen that wasn't there? How many accounting systems now break? How many integrations did we build that have to be refactored to bring this checkbox all the way forward? To make it work. You didn't think about any of that. And your vendor didn't care because you're going to pay him to fix that upstream and that upstream. This is going to be the gift that just keeps on giving. The reality is you need to get and ask a different question. Why would I need this checkbox? And
mm,
work as a partner with your vendor. This is where AI starts to come in real handy. If you've trained your employees on how to interact with AI, how to interact with data elements, how to manage context, through prompt engineering, through MCP, through interfaces, and a lot of these systems are enabled today. So you started with, do I think these ERP systems are ready? I think they've laid the foundation for it by adding the MCP layer, the connective layer for things to be built on top of it and for them to connect to each other very easily. But you still need to have the way to talk to it and understand its limitations. Because if you're relying on the knowledge inside the LLM and it's compelled to answer you no matter what, and you didn't give it the real data, it'll fill in the blanks with what it thinks it should be, and you'll start getting the hallucinations out of it, right?
mm,
So that's where the education and investment in your own people and how to deal with these tools, because we've been trained that computers give us right answers. We've been
mm,
trained that they run math calculations and give us so, and what's worse is now we've got this tool that is so good at speaking and writing, it's convincing. There's a meme out there that, they asked this thing to give us 100 Stephen King quotes, and it did because it's compelled to answer. And then they showed it to Stephen King, and no one could find more than 10 doing an independent search. So 90 of these aren't right. And even Stephen King couldn't tell which of these 100 wasn't his. Right. So therein lies the challenge is how do you weed that out? It's by tightly controlling the narrative of use. For ERP implementations, the force multiplier is it can digest incredible amounts of data and then present that to you as recommendations, but it's not a replacement for the work.
mm,
For instance, I'm bringing implementation in. I've done the due diligence on my as is and my to be. I've got 6 integrations I have to have built. Some of these can be auto generated through agentic AI because both systems have MCP, but some of them can't. And I've had the functional specs written. So I can now easily ask my AI partner on this, and this I've got this in the framework, exact prompts that you can load in. Here's a tool, put the documents in there and ask this question. Which of these requirements does not yet have an adequate test criteria or success criteria? What's missing here? Is there anything that I haven't thought of that I should test in an integration of this type? Now I'm having it give me oh, that is a good one. Man, if I hadn't to put this in, this is going to catch me down the line. Great. Thank you, thought partner, for providing this. So let me update the document. What about now? Right? It is good at chewing through and doing functional alignments. I sent out an RFP. I got these answers from my vendor. Can you do a functional alignment against their answers to my requirements? Which ones weren't really answered well or were answered too vaguely that I should go back and ask more questions on in the reviewing process? So it's at every phase from before you buy to the planning phase. What am I missing on a readiness checklist? I have to go out to sites. Oh, well, did you check the hardware? Did you check the Wi-Fi? AI is very good at helping pinpoint some of those things. Here's my project plan. Are there any overlaps? Am I overusing a resource? Yes, you've got a resource in your plan that looks like it's running at 60 hours a week for too long. Oh, thank you. I did overlook that because I had put that person in too many swim lanes. Those are the areas where you're going to get the force multipliers. Let this thing be a co-pilot, right? You see that term overused, but it's good at that during the implementation phase. It can help you build test plans. And even better, if there's an agentic MCP layer in the application, it can run the tests.
Hmm. Evan, let me understand correctly. So you are talking about a copilot. This copilot, is it something that comes together with one of the software like Oracle, Salesforce, SAP, or is it something that you had to build as a consultant, something that will work with anything?
So I would recommend if you're using an AI co-pilot for the implementation, you own your own. There's plenty off the shelf. This is just, it could be Grok, it could be Claude, it could be
Yeah.
ChatGPT. Give it a week, right? One's they're leapfrogging each other. So just I wouldn't get too excited about just pick one. And then you're basically building an ERAG or a context system. Understand what your subscription level is. How big is your context, right? You don't want to put 50 terabytes of documents and it can't chew through that because your subscription level doesn't allow it. Narrow your question. Because even right now, at its most basic, ChatGPT would allow you to upload 3 or 4 PDFs and ask questions about it. Upload 3 or 4 PDFs and ask questions about it. That makes it a force multiplier for your business analyst. What am I missing? Because you and I both know these bigger ERP implementations, you may have a 400 or 500 page architectural document with multiple designs, as is, to be. What do I got to do? If it comes out with 30 integrations, those have 40 or 50 pages in functional specs. Then I got tech specs. Is there anything in the tech spec that doesn't address a functional requirement? And I'm just doing alignments. Here, do some heavy lifting for me. Find out what I'm missing, what's not there. But that doesn't excuse me from the work. I still need to do my work. So there's no version of this where you've excluded people in an ERP implementation because there's too much strategy, too much intuition, too much planning. Where AI, unless you have very specific rules and deployment, and any project manager worth their salt will tell you, yeah, project management's more of an art, right? You've got to be very flexible. You've got to be able to move and be agile as you're going through. And it's the same thing with OCM. So back to your original question is where AI can help is, and I talk about this in the framework, is you can send out surveys to the project team and you can, using AI to analyze the surveys you get back, do I have a morale problem in my
Hmm.
team? Am I creating burnout? Am I creating enough success, like the little wins to keep the energy? It's an amazing amount of grit required to roll out an ERP system. It's phenomenal. If you haven't been through it, I've seen it ruin people. Like they get to the end, like I don't ever see the end of this because they've never been through one, right? So if it's a first timer, so it's hard to do that because you have to almost muscle it into place. And AI can definitely take some of the lift burden out of what would be some of the most stretched, but more importantly, it can save your ass by identifying, hey, you're about to roll out, you've got a physical scale location. Have you done a site survey? No. I didn't do that. Should I have someone go out there and find out, do they have Wi-Fi? Do they have cellular? What is the hookup? Is it old RS-232 or do they have an IP connected system? Oh my gosh, you're right. I need to go do a site survey. How do I have a readiness checklist if I haven't gone on site to look at the thing? That's an extreme case, but the deal is in large projects, I've seen big things like that get missed.
Hmm.
And then your pilot go live day is a train wreck because no one's ready for a fallback. No one's ready for a rollback. No one's ready for what happens when they get. I don't have a staging area for someone to do fast triage and quick learns. We didn't set a threshold on what's okay to be wrong versus what would be an all stop moment. No one's really thought through those mitigations. Does my mitigation plan look good? Anything else like it? All of those things add a lot of lift and experience to a project rollout. Then when you get to post maintenance and you're living with your product, then it's the agents that are running the day to day. Always have an off ramp for your agent. Don't take humans out of the equation. Just be a force multiplier for them, right? And make sure that your use case is extremely narrow. Minimize the amount of flexibility that your agent has to make decisions because it will be compelled to answer. It will complete the task, whatever the case. So anything that you give it leeway to discuss will be a problem. One thing that these things are great at doing is finding holes in your test strategy. And if you don't know what to look for, you may be lulled into a sense of, look how powerful this is. Look how easily it made these decisions without me. That is an area that you need to put back on the thing. Go, okay, how did you make this decision? Should you have made this decision? Should I be more declarative in how this decision's being made? It's exciting that you did it. It's exciting that you saved me a lot of time. But do I always want you making this decision? And what happens if you make the wrong one?
Hmm. Are the big solutions really, have they invested enough on AI in order to facilitate an implementation? And let me tell you a little bit more why I'm asking you this question, because I don't use a big ERP. I use a small ERP. Odoo. You know it is for a small company, so that's simple enough. I was trying to do things on my own, and I used their bot, AI bot, and I couldn't find a solution. The way it answered to me, it looked like too complicated. And definitely it was referring to a version that I was not managing. So he didn't even
Mm,
know which version I was handling. So my question to you is, do SAP, Oracle, Salesforce come already with a package that allows you to implement things so that you can reduce the cost of implementation and reduce the cost of these expensive German consultants that come with SAP? They all have the same face, by the way. In any case, back in the days.
I do it. And they all have very good looking sales teams. So,
Yes.
right out of gap. But look, the reality of this is if anyone came to you and said they're an expert in this space, I'd say just wait a month and they're no longer an expert. This space is evolving so quickly, there's no such thing as an expert. ERP systems that are deploying, MCP is an evolving standard. The big three, four guys, the Anthropic, Claude, all of the, Grok and ChatGPT, OpenAI, they're building MCP. Microsoft is in there now, and it's an evolving standard. They're constantly evolving. And then companies with ERP systems are taking that standard and building on top of it,
Hmm.
which means if it's an evolving standard, that might be good for a little while, but then the next big thing would be problematic. Like, for instance, I just came back from Redmond, Washington, and Microsoft's big concern with MCP is at the time of that trip, there wasn't strong agent to agent communication. You still had orchestrator multiple agents
Yeah.
to it. MCP allowed for that. But then agent to agent, that it goes from a one to n algorithmic exponential problem to an end-to-end exponential problem. Um, we're still getting our heads wrapped around the fact that my orchestrator might spawn a bunch of agents, and then I have to make sure that those are well constrained to make sure that there's no hallucinations or stochastic outcomes. I need to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. I need to make sure that there's off ramps for those. Now, if an agent's talking to another agent and it's passing off a piece of that task, now it gets infinitely more complicated for me to chase that down, but I can solve infinitely more complicated problems. We're outrunning our observability in some of these things. So I would say the answer to your question is it depends on what it is they're doing. I would say at a global level, the answer is no. Everyone's running at it, learning at it a little bit better. Some of us are taking a little bit more of a conservative approach. Keep it narrow, keep it focused, make sure that you have a confidence rating above a percentage. And if it drops below the percentage, immediately it off ramps to a human. In other words, if that AI is not 100, 90, 80, 70, whatever the threshold is, which usually is just to be needs to be a little bit better or equal to the human, right? And ultimately needs to be a cheaper solution than the human. I need to answer both of those, then I'm okay with it, right? Because I've got humans that are doing this right now and they make mistakes and I live with it, right? But I need to make sure that I have that same output here. Those use cases tend to run very well. They don't run amok. They're easily monitorable, they're observable. I can audit them. But if to your point, there's now something in the background that says this and it is not context aware, they've disconnected that chatbot to the point where you're talking to a co-pilot and it's unaware of what you have, that feels like maybe a poor implementation around this. That was a rush to get AI in there so they could do a tick box exercise of saying we have AI, right? Because there's a huge pressure for boards and private equity to say your product has AI in it, right? But I can tell you it will be felt in the industry, AI done right versus I tick box and said it had AI. I mean, anyone that right now is fighting the Microsoft Copilot that pops up in every single product, Exchange has Copilot. It's like, could you just, I'm trying to type an email. No, I don't want to use your tutor thing. I'm in Teams. I see you. I need you out of the way so I can I'm just having a meeting. I need you out of my way. That's frustrating in a lot of ways. Now, Microsoft is trying to learn and trying to do the right thing. Everyone's in the right space, but it's going to take time for us to evolve into the space where agents are just in the background doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I think the biggest flaw is everyone's connecting it to these GTP5, Grok 4, Claude, the next version coming out, these super intelligent things that know everything, and they're going to be hard to find gaps in your use case with them because they'll fill them because they're super intelligent. If I take that LLM and put it on the side and say, you're good for helping me being a thought partner, I like you as a thought partner, which is what I recommend in the customer journey. Use those guys for thought partner because they know everything on the internet and they'll give you every possible opinion on the internet and then you can make a judgment. But for a tool, I want a smaller 2 to 8 billion parameter LLM that's good enough at thinking through a workflow but doesn't have enough knowledge to fill in a gap and may go, ooh, I don't know what to do here. I have to ask you more information. That makes me feel better because that's going to expose a problem. Like for it to come up and go, I know how to fill out these tokens in this template automatically scares me. But for it to go, I don't know where to put these in the template. What would a token look like? Oh, yeah, yeah, right. Let me go ahead and fill that. Now I know what you're doing and you're asking me what we're doing because your LLM isn't smart enough to fill in the gaps so you can't fool me. And now you're going to expose all the areas that my context is supposed to know. And I'm not going to brute force attack you with my prompt engineering. I don't want 25, 30 page prompt because I'll never win that game. But I want you to be almost stupid in the general at a global level, but smart enough to go, when I ask you to go create a customer that does this and does this, you can look at the MCP layer, look at the APIs and go, oh, I need to call these 5 things. And the information you gave me gives me everything I need. I'll go do it. Or you didn't tell me what the customer's name was. Oh, sure. Here's the customer's name. I need that kind of an AI. I don't need the super intelligent AI that's going to make up a name because it's got all the intelligence. It must be John Smith and just completes the task. You see what I'm saying? Those are the challenges that I think are out there, and people are running too fast at solutions.
Evan, do you think that we are reaching the moment where soon we will have ERP implementations that are without consultants, that we can do? People like we understand a little bit about databases, we could potentially implement an ERP in a big corporation. And my second question is, do the sellers, the software developers want that? That there is software that is sold without the consultants.
Yeah, so there's a new concept of LLMs. It's a business language model or business. It's built for businesses. You're going to see what you are asking for occur at the same time that most, if not all, UI disappears. In other words, think about the purpose of UI. Most of UI is so that I can plug data into it. But if I can just tell it to a bot or it can intuit the answer, it can get it from the various endpoints. It can ask the customer a very little bit of information. Hey, a customer asked me to set up a service return or to order a pizza. I got a request to order a pizza, and it sends me goes, hey, they're looking for this pizza, but they have a special ingredient that I didn't know you have. Do you have it? Yeah. Okay. I'll let them know you can have it. And then it just goes back and forth. It manages all the accounting in the back end. The We're moving away from static, normalized databases into nodes and edges of data that's easily crunchable by I think we're a little ways off from that. Now, I say that today, maybe in 3 months, we're closer to that. But the reality is we don't have it today at that space. We're still needing to give it structured data. It's getting better at being able to deduce that, but now I'm relying back on that LLM to deduce that customer ID here and customer ID, oh, these must be the same ID. It's not a hard leap, but if this said customer ID and this said cust ID and it made that leap, I get nervous because those aren't identical. And did it make the right choice? I don't know, right? So I would say that we're going to be moving away from screens, more intuitive interfaces, less UI, and how the data is stored under the hood becomes a factor of unstructured large lakes. And I'm able to dig in, grab the data I need, process the data I need using agents and activity. Because even today, right now, if you had an MCP layer talk to a set of APIs with little to no context in there, now it's the most dangerous kind, but little to no, you could ask it to review that MCP, look at all the swagger, look at all the, which is just, it defines all the API endpoints, all the fields you would pass to it. And it's pretty darn good at not only working out what it needs to do, but also doing it, calling the APIs and stuff. So today, I could technically connect my APIs to one of these all-knowing chatbots, and it can do stuff. It can implement it. So there's the bones of it are there,
Hmm.
right?
Is there new soft skills that people needs in order to deploy programs on digitalization in the workplace? My question is two-sided. One, from the technical people, do we really need technical people now for digitalization? That's number one. And two, soft skills, maybe new soft skills are required in order to understand this phase of AI or the opportunities that we have with AI. What's your thought about that?
So it's two parts in there. And I'm gonna answer the technical one with a non-technical story if you're okay with it, because I think it's more relatable. And then the other one, I'm going to say when Google first came out, very few people really understood how to Google, right? And now it's fairly well understood that if you Google and you get some vague answers, you run up, you put quotes around the specific thing you want, right? So we've learned how to ask the Google the things we want. And then we also know there's no point in going to the next page. If it's not on the first page, we've give up, right? So I think you're going to see that same kind of learning on prompt engineering, how to ask a question, how to provide basic constraints, right? Not the 25-page super prompt, but basic prompting, like I'm talking to you as a human and you get it. I don't have to give you 25 pages of context for me and you to talk, right? So we have to get there. So on the technical piece, there's a huge concern in the IT world because I grew up as a programmer, senior programmer, architect, and here I am in the innovation office. And there was a nervousness that if we're getting rid of all of our junior developers, where do we get architects in the future from? Do we need them? All right, so I'm going to park that for a second, and I'm going to now say, there was a guy that wrote a story that wanted to know he was an artist photographer. So he took pictures that would hang up in a museum. And his concern was, am I out of a job? So he just took a selfie of himself, and then he wrote out a prompt that described the lighting and the emotion and the stark black and white water drips. You may have even seen this out in some of the memes. There's a lot of these going around. And he looked at the and it was this, he came back. His selfie was no more greater than me and you right now, right? No makeup, no nothing, no special lighting, snapshot, probably wouldn't have posted it to an emotional, stark contrast, black and white, dark on one side, light, water dripping down, stern look, an emotional output. And he's like, oh crap, I'm out of a job. I'm gone. And he walked away for a minute and he just started to he had an epiphany. He's like, the only thing that really changed was the camera. That's the only thing that changed. It still needed me to describe the lighting because he described the lensing, he described the mood, he described what he wanted to see in a way that his mind described it. I couldn't have done that. I could have taken a selfie of myself and I couldn't have produced that flaring and understood the lensing. We still say dial a phone number. No one's dialed a phone number in decades. My kids wouldn't even know what it really means, but they still use the term. So we're still going to say things like lens flaring. We have it in games that create the sunlight when it hits the camera and it creates it's a dramatic effect. We're still going to have to teach that. And that guy might move into a role where he mentors young photographers, but there's no camera, there's no lighting, there's no pool for the guy to dip up and down, there's no contrast. I'm able to do that with a prompt because I've changed the camera. You're going to see that same analogy play out again and again across every industry. While we've moved into a different tool, and maybe we're not bringing people into play the same way we did, right? Because there's a whole group of junior programmers that didn't go through today's training. This afternoon, I'm heading to JU with Dr. Zing on software application design in the AI era. In other words, all I've changed is they're not hand jamming out lines of code anymore. They're not burdened by the typing and the syntax. So they're now, but we still have good application, architecture design, multi-tier, modular, software as a service, but we're now using AI tools to construct those things, and we still have the testing patterns. We're just changing the nature in which people are achieving the same outcome. But I can tell you, everything I've seen, unless the super intelligent starts to go, hey, what you need in this world is this thing, a picture of me with a stark contrast that you have in the museum. Humans still have to initiate that activity. So I just come back to the only thing that's changing is the camera.
So what you're saying is that the art of imagining the final solution will be still needed, but it doesn't mean that you need to have the same studies like back in the days.
You have to know what good looks like, though.
C++ plus plus or C plus or
Yeah,
plus
you're not
code
gonna get
or what?
semicolon syntax here. Who cares about any of that? I
Exactly.
need to know, is the architecture there? Is it scalable? Is it performant? Is it secure? Is it designed well? And I can describe it in a way that this tool, rather than type it all out, 15,000 lines of code, let it do that burden for me. Let me get creative. Let me test it out. What if I want to run 1 million transactions? Go run a test. Oh, it didn't work so good. Oh, well, we need to break up these services. I'm now able to iterate entire architectures in second. Could you imagine going back to your architect and going, look, we've reached a performance issue. We need to go to SOA. You were just standard API. He would probably leave the company. He's like, I'm not doing that. I'm not re-architecting the whole thing. Where we can now get AI to just rerun the entire architecture, break the components out. Let's try it this way. We didn't know that you needed to get 4 billion transactions a second. So here's what you would need. Here's the containerization. And it just does all of that. And
Hmm.
then here's your testing proof, and here's your outcome. And now your architecture is now packaged, contained, sitting in Docker, ready for deployment. That's amazing. And that doesn't require you or me. I know how to use a phone. I couldn't tell you the first friggin' way of how it works. And that's the hallmark of great technology. It's invisible.
Yeah.
It just works, and I don't have to know how it works, but I do have to know how to use it.
Hmm.
That's what needs to change, is that we need to impress upon the person who is creative, who understands logical flow. That didn't go away. I need to be able to do process steps logically. That's still important. So data flow is important. I need to know what I need to get out of it. And I need to know how to prompt this thing to describe the lens flaring and the stuff. I need to talk to it in its high definition rate, things that are taught to artists.
Hmm.
I still need to know those things so that I can now take and apply that to an AI camera. I would do the same thing. I need to know what good architecture is. I need to understand what monitorability is. I need to understand what interior architecture is so that I can describe that to an AI so that it can go build it. That's the nature of the change that's coming. I think this doomsday apocalypse where all the human beings have no job and robots are running around doing everything is a false narrative. I think it's a false prophecy. I don't think it's real because if you limit, where are we doing this if we get rid of all the humans? What's the point?
Mm,
What's the point in having infinite production of anything if there's no one to enjoy the infinite production? Why would I produce it? It's a paradoxical doomsday. It makes no sense.
mm. So what is a reality is that certain jobs as they are today may change radically. Like I'm trying to
Yeah.
imagine, for instance, a translator. Why the hell do you need a translator anymore? Because AI is making it good. I speak fluently two languages and I can see the translations and it makes sense. It looks good.
Yeah.
Um, for instance, some people say we don't need lawyers. We still need lawyers, but lawyers that know how to prompt correctly. What the hell? I think
I
that
can tell you right now, anyone that's been a victim of the justice system knows you need lawyers because it's highly interpretive,
yeah.
right? It's not a set of draconian rules. Law
Mm,
isn't that way. It's designed to be vague. It's designed to be argued so that
exactly.
human beings can make a decision on the circumstances. Lawyers aren't going away.
Mm,
Now, the amount of work that lawyers do or the way that we would query into historical law and precedents may change.
yeah.
The way that I would build my case file, the way I write that case file
Mm,
tool might change a little bit, and you better check it. That goes back to, because there's been a lot of lawyers that's had some problems when they just sent in case law for stuff that wasn't right because it's compelled to answer, right? So that's where we're at right now. That's why a lot of those high-end services aren't going to be there. But then you see the rigor of looking at X-rays or scans or MRIs and the AI is able to detect things way earlier than a doctor, yes,
mm,
please use that, but don't take the doctor away,
mm,
because the doctor at some point needs to say, is the juice worth the squeeze? The side effects of this medicine at that stage isn't worth it. Here's a better way to go. The AI is going to look just at what was historically done and give you those options.
mm,
It's not intuiting a new option yet. That so keep humans in there. Person plus AI, guys. That's where it's at. You need that creativity, you need that inventiveness, you need that. If we ever get to the point where our children are fearless and no longer afraid to be creative, that's going to be the marriage that we see the next renaissance of humanity,
mm.
right?
Love that, in fact. So the real revolution with this AI is that if it acts as a human enhancer that facilitates implementation, that becomes less expensive, that where even somebody who understands a little bit of technology but not so much can lead a project,
Right.
that is awesome. Maybe new skills are going to be required, maybe a little bit more of curiosity, adaptability to learn new things, but that's the key message of these
Yeah.
ERP implementations. We will need less of time on waste, like writing this 45 pages business case that I remember from 2005. That ones I hated them, and nobody read them, by the way, Evan.
Yeah, well, therein lies the problem is you spend all that time building the business case, you build the business functional requirements, and you still get the wrong answer because nobody read them because it's too much. It's too. I get that today. That's all I hear is how verbose I am, right? But what I would love to do is to iterate quickly with AI, get to a result, and then ask AI to back document itself for the person that I'm being compassionate to in the future. And 9 times out of 10, it's me. I'm being compassionate to myself a year from now going, what the heck was I doing here? Oh, okay, good. I'm glad I got this document to tell me what I was doing. That makes more sense because after a year, you forgot the why behind it. You can see what it's doing, but it's the why that often gets lost. So, look, I don't see this world as being as apocalyptic as everyone seems to think it is. I think we're going to adapt, we're going to change. You're going to find people building software applications that don't have 4-year degrees in technical rigor of programming and pointers and memory buffers and all the stuff that doesn't add value to the outcome, right? It was just the mechanics of it, the engineering. We can delegate that stuff to the machine. What we need to do is to be creative and intuitive. And you're seeing it. You're seeing these TikTokers go into tools like N8N and they're fully automating their lives. They're automating all of their posts, they're automating all of their email, they're automating their immediate reactions, they're automating their trades on various investment platforms. They have found tools. None of them have programming backgrounds. They
Mm.
have learned how to use the AI as a tool to build something that would have taken us months or years to build.
Hmm, indeed. Evan, so how do can people reach you out? Because I'm pretty sure that there is a lot of wisdom, and we didn't have the time to discuss a lot of the wisdom, the real implementations that you have worked on, and the people side of things. I think that there is much more to discuss. How can people reach you out on top, of course, of reading your book, People, Places, and Things, which I think is written in a very human business oriented approach. Is nothing technical. I
That's
went
right.
a couple of pages and it was like easy to understand for a person like me.
Yeah, it's written for business users to understand the journey that they're about to embark on if they're going through that. The customer journey is really the handbook and the mechanics to do it. So if you want to get in touch with me or understand any of the exciting things I'm doing, go to evanjschwartz.com. My website has everything I'm doing with AMCS. It has everything I'm doing at JU for our classes and making sure that the next generation of technical experts come ready in this new AI world and what I'm doing with people, places, and things in the customer journey. It's all there on that site.
Amazing. I'm going to be putting those links below this episode. Evan, thank you very much for being so nice to explain me things that
No
maybe
worries.
15 years ago I would say this is too complicated, but gosh, I could understand 95% of what you say.
Good. We'll work out the next 5% on the next episode.
Thank you very much, Evan. Have an excellent day ahead.
You too, brother. I appreciate it.
Ciao. Ciao.